We are going to create this layout you see here with basic HTML5 and some CSS. It's the kind of layout you see a lot these days, used on product websites, for example. More and more now you see it appearing on weblogs as well. And they use basically a color separation, as you can see here on the backgrounds, to separate each of the articles or products. And then we have the top here with the navigation. And if I just make the size of the window smaller here, you can see that basically we can click on one of these and we can jump to each of the articles, and that's what we're going to create. So let's go ahead and get started. I will be using Coda 2 on the Mac here because it allows me to see this live preview of the web page as I make changes on the right hand side here. Let's go over the files quickly. I have an index.html, which as you can see is a very empty basic HTML5 structure, and then I have a CSS file which is also empty. Beyond that, I have a couple of image files that I will also be using, as you saw in the preview at the beginning of the video. Let's start by adding the basic information in the HTML file. So we're going to go into the body tag here and let's add a header. This will be our header section. Close the tags, and in there we're going to have an h1 tag, and this is going to be the title. So let's just put some text in here. We won't add the navigation yet, we'll come down to that later on. Let's add the structure and some content for our first article. So we'll just add the article tag, and let's go ahead and just close that tag. Inside we're going to put an h2 tag, which will be the title of the article. And then after that we're going to go in and just add some paragraph text. Sorry, we'll add the author. And then we will add some basic paragraph text. And what I'll do to save time on some typing here, we're just going to put in some lorem ipsum text just to fill it out. You can see that happening on the right hand side there in the preview. So that's the basic layout for our article. Let's go ahead and just save ourselves some time and just replicate this. We'll make 2 more. Change the name here. Sorry, the title. And let's add a little more text to this one. And then on the third one, we'll just change the title to some title. But let's add a few more blocks of text, just so we've got some varying lengths to play with here and see what's happening. Always a good idea when you're doing a layout to try and cover every eventuality as you're putting in the content here. This will help you see things like the sizing and the stretching. So that's our basic layout. As you can see, we've got no styling here on the preview at the moment, and that's what we're going to do in the next part. Let's start addressing the CSS. The first thing we need to do for our CSS is to actually include the style sheet in the header, but I'm actually going to include another one as well, and you'll see on the screen a link to download it. It is Eric Meyer's excellent CSS reset that I thoroughly recommend you use just about everywhere. So let's go ahead and add the links. Because it's HTML5, I just need to say it's a style sheet and leave it at that. And then the only other thing I need to provide is a location for the file. Let's close the tag there, which in this case the reset, as you can see on the left hand side, is basically reset.css. Let's take that and copy that. Now we're going to do the same thing again, but we're going to include our empty style sheet, which is called styles.css. We'll save that, and as you can see instantly on the right here, everything gets reset thanks to that reset.css file. And if you want to see the contents, I'll just open that up quickly. There's some stuff in here that basically resets all of your browsers and strips out any of the pre-existing CSS that may be included by the vendor. Let's just close that file. So now our CSS file, of course, is empty, and we're going to start adding our custom CSS for the layout. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the HTML file, and I'm going to add in here some class names. And on the article tags, I'm going to add in a base class that I'll be using. So I'm just going to say class equals article. And I'm going to take that and I'm just going to copy that across to the other articles. You won't see anything right now, but you will in a second. So that's those in place. I'm going to go ahead and save that. Let's go over to our styles here, and we'll start by putting some basic layout tags that'll be used across the board. So we're going to add a body tag here, and we're going to say the background color. And you can see that's pretty horrible right now, but trust me, it'll get better. We'll add a font family since I'm going to use the same one throughout the entire page. Let's move on to the header section. Now for the header, I'm going to have a different background color, and I've got this noted down here, so I'm just going to type this in. Of course, you can use anything you want. These are just some colors to basically show you the different sections. And I'm going to give it a predefined height of 100 pixels. And let's save that. So that's that laid out there. Now let's address the H1 tag, the title for our site here. So that's going to be the H1 tag inside the header, and that's how we tell it to do that. Now for this, I did want a different font weight, and I want it to be bold. I also want to increase the font size from the base size here. And for that, I'm going to use 2.5 ems. I'm going to add some padding to the left of 20 pixels. And we're also going to move it down from the top a little bit by adding a padding of 10 pixels. And then finally, we want it to be centered. So as I save that, you'll see the screen update. That's the H1 title tag taken care of. Let's go ahead and add the generic properties for all of the articles. To do that, we use the article class. Remember, we put that in the tags already in the HTML. And we're going to say that I want some padding on the left of 20 pixels. I want the background color. Now this is really only going to apply to the first article, and you'll see how that works a little later on. But for right now, they're all going to have the same background color. I want to adjust the font size slightly for the tablets and mobile devices. Let's make it a little bit bigger. So let's make it 1.3 em. That won't be too big on the desktop. Let's change our line height to that standard 140% that's always recommended. And what we're going to do as well is we want to set the height of each of the articles. But we want the article size to change, the background to change based on the content of the article. So if it's longer, we want it to stretch out, otherwise you get some weird overlapping. So to do that, we actually set a property that's called the minimum height. So we say the minimum height of each article is to be 300 pixels. So let's do that, and now if I go ahead and save that, you'll see we have our three articles. The second one and the third one are a lot bigger than the first, and that's because we've said the minimum height is 300, but go ahead and expand if you need to in the height to accommodate the content. Now I'm noticing that I actually don't like the way the padding is working on the articles, so instead of just padding on the left, I'm actually going to change all of the padding all around all four sides, top, left, right and bottom, to 20 pixels. There you go, and that feels a whole lot happier. Now there's one other thing, there's one other generic tag that we can add here, and so I'm going to say the article, since this is the same in every single one, the author, and I'm going to say on there I want the font. Let's change the font size to be slightly smaller so it doesn't stand out so much. We'll make that 0.7 em, and let's change the color of it as well, and I'm going to use a color that I know is going to work here, and save that. And so now you can see starting to take a little more shape here. The author in each one of these is a little smaller. It's not so obvious, but it's still there. You've got to give credit where credit's due, and the colors in place as well. I'm noticing that there is actually one other generic tag we can target here, and that is the title of each of the articles. So let's go ahead and add that in here. I'm just going to say article, and it's actually the H2 tag is the one we want to target. And for that, I'm going to change the font weight. Let's make it bold. Let's increase the font size slightly. So in this one, I'm going to make it 1.3 em. And let's go ahead and change the color. And I've got a color here. And save that. So there we go. Now we've got our titles in place as well, looking the same, looking rather nice in all three of those. That's the last of the tags that we can target generically. Now we need to start targeting each of the articles and get that sort of color gradation in the background that you're seeing. To target each article, we're actually going to give them unique class names, and we do that by chaining them to the ones that are pre-existing. So let's go to the index.html file. On the second article, you will see we have the article class in place, and we can add another one as sort of a descendant from there, and we can say, okay, we want to add article 2, and then on the third one we'll add article 3. Let's go ahead and save that. It's not going to look any different right now. We'll go back to our styles, and down here I'm just going to add article 2 as a class. So for article 2, it's very simple. All we want to do is override one property, and that's the background color. So I'm just going to put that in here, and I've got a color that I'm going to put in like so, and you can see that that changes. That's all we need to override. We want all the properties to stay the same for all the articles, and I'm going to do the same again for article 3. So I'm just going to add the class and change the background color to something else. Save it, and there it is. So now we've got the separation from the 3 articles. And you can see that the sizes are changing as needed for each of the content for each article. It stretches to fit. At this point, let's add our navigation to the header of the site. So I'm going to go back to the HTML file, and to save some time here, I'm just going to paste in some code. I'll explain what it is. After the h1 tag in the header, I'm just going to paste in. And what I've got is a navigation tag, set of navigation tags you can see here. And inside there is an unordered list, and each list item has a link, and you can see there's # article 1, # article 2, and # article 3, and just some text as well in the link there. And those are anchor tags that we're going to put in place to each of the articles on the page, so it'll jump down the page when you click on it to the relevant article. If I go ahead and save this, you'll see it's not very well formatted right now, but we'll get to that in a second. What we need to do now is add our anchor tags to each of the articles so they know where to go to. So I'm going to put it in here again. I'm going to paste in what I've got, and I'll explain it. And the important part here is, from a presentation standpoint, I'm actually putting the link above the starting article tag. And the reason being is that when it jumps down, if I just scroll to demonstrate here, when you click the link and jump down, it's going to jump down to the first part of the article section like so. So we're going to have this nice space above, and it'll look nice and presentable as your viewer reads the article. So that's the first one. Let's go ahead and put the second one in here, article 2. And down here we will put in the third one, article 3. Let's just save that, and on the right hand side here, if I click on article 2, you'll see it now jumps down, and it's that gap that I was saying about. It gives us some nice presentation for article 2. And if I scroll back up and click on article 1, same there. Article 3 of course can't go to the top because there's not enough content to fill the screen. So let's just scroll back up here. Now let's address the styling of the links and make it look a little more sort of navigation like. To address the styling of our navigation, let's go over to the styles. And what we're going to do, I'll just put it on the end here. We'll start by targeting that navigation tag. And for that, what we're going to say is, we're going to set the display to table, and we're going to set the margin to 0 and auto, and I'll save this and you'll see what happens. And what that does, by setting display to table and then using the margin 0 and auto, it essentially tells the browser to center the contents of the navigation on the screen. And so now as we go through, and if we address each of the list items, you'll see how that works, and it'll always be centered. It's a little trick there for you. So let's target the list items. So they're inside the navigation, and they are li tags. And we're going to say display to be inline. And then I'm going to set a margin on the right, so there's a gap between each of them. And I'm going to say 20 pixels, and I'm going to save that. And so now you can see it looks a little more sort of navigation-like, something you're used to seeing. One other thing we're going to do is change the look of the links. I want to change the color and remove that underline because it's kind of ugly, even though it's kind of a default that you see. So to do that, I need to target the navigation A link, but at the same time I like to change the visited one as well. So I'm going to do that there like that, the visited state. And so all we need to do is first of all I'm going to change the font size, and I want it to be slightly larger, so 1.2 em. And then for the text decoration I'm going to say none, so there is no underline. And if I save that, you can see it's a little bigger and we lose the underline. But what we're going to do, obviously on a mobile device like a tablet or a phone, you don't have the hover state, but desktop users do. So let's give them something. It won't matter in the slightest to those mobile users, but for desktop users we're going to change it so that when you hover over the link, it actually will have the underline. And we also want to change the color, and let's make it just white. And if I save that, and now if I move my mouse over there, you can see it changes to white and we get the underline. And that's how we deal with the navigation links. We are almost at the end of our design here. There is one thing you may notice is missing, and that's the images that we included on the first two articles at the beginning of the video in the preview. So let's go ahead and add those. Let's go back to our index.html, and in the first article before the header, I'm going to take advantage of a little thing here in Coda, and it'll save me some typing, and I'm going to take this image file and I'm just going to drag it and let go here, and it's going to add the code that I need. But I don't want these sizes, these images sizes, they're way too big. All I want is a height of 200 pixels, and I'm going to let the browser figure out the width for me. So I'm just going to do that there, remove the width, and now I'll save the file. And when I go back to the top, you'll see we've got the image file, but with some formatting issues. We'll get to those. Let's go to the second article and do the same thing again. I'm going to take the other image file, going to drag it over and put it in the right place above the H2 tag. Again, I'll set the height to 200 pixels, and I'm going to remove the width here. These images, by the way, are courtesy of my design site, which is graphicsmedia.com, graphicsmedia.com. And let's just save that, and now we should see an image on both of the, there we go, the first and the second article. Now let's go ahead and address the formatting issues. So let's go over to our style sheet, and after the .article class I'm going to add target the image tag within the article. So article image is the tag, and I want it to float to the left. I always want it to be on the left hand side of the content. If I save that, you can see what happens. Now both of the images are floated to the left, and we have the text on the right hand side, but we have a bit of a problem here because you can see that this text is butt up against the image, and from a design standpoint it's pretty horrible. So what we're going to do is we're also going to add a margin on the right hand side of the image of 20 pixels and save that, and now you can see that feels a little bit better. And just to show you, as I move this here, you can see the content wraps around the image nicely, and that's how we deal with that. But there's a slight problem again. We want this image to be on the right hand side. So all we need to do to deal with that is say that in .article2, the article2 class, the image tag, we actually want it to, we want to override the .article class, and we actually want it to float to the right and save it. And there you go. So now you can see we've got one on the left and one on the right. And you may want to alternate those. In a blog, for example, you may be using featured images, and you may want them to go left, right as you loop through the articles. So that wraps up. I'll look at creating a basic modern layout. I hope it gives you some ideas and something to work with. Have fun with it, and be sure to check out uibuzz.com for more videos.